Right, it is 7 o'clock, so I'll call to order the regular meeting of the Common Council of the City of Platteville for Tuesday, August 27th, 2019, and we will start with roll call.
Robin Klein is excused. Isaac Shanley.
Here.
Eileen Nichols.
Here.
Barbara Stockhausen.
Here.
Barbara Doss is excused. Ken Killian.
Here.
All right, we have two public hearings this morning. We're going to start first with the conditional use permit request from Rolling Hills Church at 1595 West Main Street, and we'll start with staff presentation.
Okay, yes, this is a request for basically the second part of the conditional use permit approval for Rolling Hills Church. The council granted the first part of the approval back in April of 2018. At that time, they didn't have all the details as far as their design, so it was basically a conceptual approval to allow a church at that general location with the idea that they'd come back with more information for the final approval. So that's why we're here this evening. Since that time, they also received approval to create the 5-acre parcels where the church is going to be located. So that has already been approved. So the additional information they provided, they have the building plans, at least conceptual building plans, elevations, additional site plan details for you to look at, some stormwater information, etc. So that's all in your packet. The building design that they have will eventually accommodate up to 200 congregants. They also have a parking lot adjacent to it that is not finalized at this point, but the preliminary plan has about 80 spaces and is designed to be expanded in the future for additional growth if necessary. The access to the church as proposed will be from a new driveway connecting to the property from West Main Street, actually where it turns into County Highway B. And they have received approval from Grant County Highway Department to allow that driveway at that location. At this point in time, the church is only asking for that one approval, which is a change from the conceptual approval when the council granted it. There was a recommendation from the council at that time that the property have two access points, one from an extension of Creek Court and also a driveway from West Main Street. But I think at that time, most people, including myself, were under the assumption that the church would be located on the east side of the 5-acre parcel, and the Creek Court extension would have been the most logical access point for that location. But as they did their final design of the site plan, they decided to put the church far on the west side of their property. So the distance from Creek Court to that proposed building location really made it so it wasn't a logical connection point, and really didn't seem necessary for this size of a project. The building will be connected to city water and sanitary sewer service, and it will be connected at the West Main, where it ends. The city services currently end on West Main Street. Excuse me. The project will also include on-site stormwater management for the building and parking improvements. They have submitted some preliminary designs in addition to what's shown on the site plan. That's preliminary at this point. They will have to do some modifications to that once the final site plan design and layout have been nailed down, so they can do the actual calculations of the runoff from that development. So that will have to be modified as they finish the site plan design. Excuse me. There was a couple of items of concern, or at least that the council wanted to have looked at as part of this final part of the CUP approval. One, as I mentioned, the access, vehicular access. The second one was pedestrian access, and so this did go to the Safe Routes Committee. They looked at it based on a preliminary, kind of an earlier draft of their plan. So the conditions have changed a little bit since their review, but they said based on the preliminary information, they would prefer at some point in the future a sidewalk connection via Creek Court, the north side of Creek Court, west side of Moonlight Drive, to connect to the existing sidewalk on Main Street. They have had an additional review of this since the Plan Commission meeting, and basically have concurred that at some point a sidewalk is going to be necessary. They would like to see a sidewalk connection, but since there's parts of the project and development around it that are unknown at this time, they kind of agreed that it would make more sense to have the council make a decision at some point in the future where and when that sidewalk should be located. But it was agreed that at some point, if the council does make that decision, that the church should be required to install it as needed. The stormwater was also an area of concern initially because there was some concern that the runoff would go towards the properties on the west side of Moonlight Drive. With this new location further to the west, any drainage coming from the site will not go towards those properties, so that takes care of that concern that was raised. The Plan Commission reviewed this and did recommend approval with several conditions or comments. They agreed that the one driveway access from County Highway B is adequate at this time, but again, at some point when Creek Court is extended to accommodate future development, that a second driveway may be required to be connected at church's expense at that time. The final design of the driveway and parking area must provide adequate areas for fire truck access and exit to the property as determined by the fire department in writing. The fire department has completed a preliminary review of it, and I provided their comments in the letter. Since this just kind of came around recently, the church has not had adequate time to take those comments into consideration as far as their design. So I would suggest that basically requirement stay in place, but at least it gives you an idea of the items that would have to be addressed. They also recommended the fire hydrant be provided as necessary by the fire department, and again, that location provided in writing, which they've also identified that in their letter at this time. And then again, as council deems necessary, sidewalks shall be provided and paid for by the church at the property frontage locations required by the council. So those were the recommendations from the Plan Commission, and staff would agree with those recommendations and recommend approval. Any questions?
Any questions from the council members?
I have some questions as far as the stormwater control. When will those controls be established? Before they do any clearing of the area to make the parking and to build the church? So what's going to be the sequence here as far as keeping the stormwater from getting into the Roundtree branch?
The sequence of events is that they're required to put up, they're required to submit an erosion control plan initially, and that they are supposed to install their erosion control measures to make sure that sediment does not leave the site prior to any of the other construction activities. Then during their sequencing of events, then they need to have their stormwater management for post-construction done. It does not have to be done first. A lot of times what people do is they will use the same facilities as a erosion control sediment trap during construction and then clean it out prior to final turnover of the construction site as the post-construction stormwater event, but that hasn't been fully determined as of yet.
Now, as far as the plan, who will check over the plan? Is that going to be done by you as DPW, or Delta 3 going to be doing that?
It will depend on the complexity of the stormwater management plan. I'm responsible for reviewing that. If I believe that I need some assistance, I may ask Delta 3 for some technical advice.
Then another question is, from the first page here, it says that discharge of the stormwater will be onto vacant land. south of the proposed church. Who does the vacant land belong to?
I believe it's Mr. Reynolds. Mr. Reynolds,
Mr. Reynolds, okay, so
he's the one who sold them the property.
that area will be made safe as far as stormwater drainage?
Yes, there's an existing swale down through that portion of the property, and that's where the discharge from the stormwater management facility will end up going. I believe you can see it on the colored map, kind of as a darker finger swale going down through there.
Okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
Any other questions from council members? All right, it's time for an applicant statement. You will come up to the microphone, please, give your name and your address.
Good evening. My name is Lauren Montgomery. My address is 4103 County Road B in Platteville, just up the road from the proposed build site. Just want to say that we appreciate everybody's help, particularly Mr. Carroll, Mr. Crowfoot. Really could not have done this without them. We agree with what the staff has presented. We just got, I think 2 days ago, the fire department's plan. So we haven't had a lot of opportunity. When I say haven't had a lot, no opportunity to really talk about that or, have any discussions with the fire department about what that's actually going to look like. But clearly, we want to comply with, whatever the fire department needs for all sorts of reasons. We want to make that happen. So that's basically the extent of our statement. We agree with what's been presented, and we just hand it over to y'all to vote to approve.
Any questions for the applicant, anyone? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Next would be public statements in favor. I don't have anyone registered to speak in favor or against. I do have someone who's asked to speak in general. Barb Dice. I never get that right. Give your name and your address, please.
I'm Barb Dice, and I reside at 115 Moonlight Drive here in Platteville. So I'm speaking just, I guess, to recognize, first of all, that we've heard lots of rumors during this process of how things are going to be, which is concerning, of course, because this very much affects our property and in our neighborhood. So we want to say we, of course, are not against at all a church coming into our neighborhood. We appreciate that that's what wants to come in, as opposed to like student housing or something like that down the road. So we very much appreciate that they are there. We also appreciate, as we see the final proposal, that right now it will just be one entrance off of County B. Our concern, and just going forward, and I guess maybe just to kind of put it on the record or for the council's future consideration, having the traffic come through, there's not a whole lot of Moonlight Drive that they will be turning down before they would turn into Creek Court. It's a pretty short span to increase a lot of traffic flow for what essentially is a dead end anyway, because it's a court all the way down. It's not a through street. So it would definitely increase the traffic on our street and we realize that in the future Creek Court will probably be developed. But as far as also putting sidewalks in, again, it's not a huge amount of space. And definitely I appreciated living on the east side of Moonlight Drive. The setback from our house from the curb is basically the size of our yard, and the front would essentially put the sidewalk in the middle of our yard and cause us to take out 3 mature trees and would look ridiculous. So we very much appreciate that The recommendation would go on the west side, although and our neighbors on the west side aren't here. I still feel like the setback, even for their houses from the curb for a sidewalk, is still going to put the sidewalk in a sort of ridiculous place for them, placement wise, in accordance with their house. And I'm sure any of us as homeowners can appreciate that you pay for your house and it looks nice and you want it to hold its value. And I think that in the future, putting a sidewalk truly on either side of that, especially just for that short span, would probably not be very beneficial. So I just kind of wanted to get on the record with that. And also to say that as you turn on Creek Court and as we face out and look out at the church and in that direction, whatever they could leave for the trees that are existing, mature trees that have been there for decades, that do provide us some buffer between the parking lot and the activity and into our neighborhood and where we look out, would super be appreciated. We really enjoy looking out over the field and the sunset. We realize that field might not always be there, but for as long as we can have a buffer at least kind of between the cars and the parking lot. And again, this is speaking from the other side of the road looking out. I'm sure that the neighbors whose yards directly abut that would agree. So anyway, we just kind of wanted on the record that anything we could do to preserve less traffic and a little buffer would be awesome. And again, we do appreciate the way that the church did rearrange their planning so that it is kind of happening more on the west side than the east, and we acknowledge that and appreciate that very much.
Thank you. I don't have anyone else who's registered to speak, so council discussion? Any questions or?
Well, I do. These trees, are they in the city's right away or in the church's right away? Can
Where a sidewalk will go or?
potentially go.
Potentially
Yeah.
go.
Howard, oh, Mr., I can't see him. This is just for the future.
Trees are in our yard on our property.
But the sidewalk, is that,
But by the time you
I'm sorry, Barb, could I have you come back up? Just because we record the meetings and that way we have your answer.
well,
So the trees that are in our yard are on our property, but the setback from the curb to where the sidewalk would go in would then cause us to have to take out the trees on our property. I know Joe came over, it's been a year ago, so I don't know if he can really remember. And Barb Doss also came over to our house and actually looked at that. It literally would put the sidewalk through the middle of our yard where our trees are. So by the time you set back enough from the curb, we don't have a huge backyard. Most of our yard's to the side. We have a big side yard and around the back, but not a big front yard from the curb. So by the time they set back enough from the curb to where they would start putting in the sidewalk, the other end of the sidewalk would be running in our trees. And would only be like yay far from the windows. People would literally be walking right by our windows of our house. So
I do that all the time because I have my front window looking right at the folks.
we didn't buy our house that way though, or our property. I mean, it would
Yeah.
literally, I'm sorry I didn't bring pictures, and if this becomes an issue in the future, I would certainly bring pictures and could show, and I think Barb Doss could speak. I don't know if Joe remembers well enough, but they were in our driveway and looked at this, and I know there was a comment from Barb even that would look pretty silly. So, and it's not an issue. I mean, right now the
I'm
plan
not
is.
worried about you doing it, I'm just questioning. And then the other trees you were talking, is that on the church's side or
So
your
the
side?
neighbors right across the street from us, their backyard abuts the property that was bought, and there's a big grove of trees there that kind of helps. And I don't know, I think it was surveyed at some point. I'm not sure how exactly the property line where those trees fall, but I don't think all of them were on the neighbor's property. So as it would be developed in the future, just hoping that we could save those trees. It wouldn't be in the way of the roadway, I don't believe, but just leaving them as a buffer rather. And initially we were told they were going to be taken out as part of a parking lot and that the parking lot was going to be on that end.
I'm sorry, yes, yeah, if you, would respond, that would be fine, thank you.
So just looking at Google Maps on that section of the street, it looks like there'd be enough room between the trees and the curb to put a sidewalk in without taking those trees, at least in your
In
front
my
yard.
front yard,
Yeah, it looks like, that's the way it looks to me.
maybe from Google Maps, but if you
Yeah.
come stand there, it will not look that way.
Right.
Anyway, I am Eric Ekdahl. I live in 320 East Lincoln Avenue in Lancaster. I am on the church building committee, and we've been discussing many of these aspects. Referring to the trees that are in the back of the west properties that are basically the houses that are against the church property, that grove of trees. As surveyed, those are on church property. However, with our building placement, our plans are to leave those trees in place, and we are actually, I'm not sure if we have or we are in discussion with the property owners to give them conditional use permission for that extent, so that they continue to mow the property up to those trees and continue to use that property. It turned out that the survey lines were cutting right through the middle of their backyard, and they were rather shocked to find the limited extent of their property. So, you know, we're hoping to give them permission to use that so that they can continue to have their full backyard usage as it is. And we appreciate the trees that are there, and we plan on keeping them there. Any other questions for me?
Those were the two questions, so,
All right,
Thank
thank
you.
you very much.
We want trees,
yeah.
but we also want neighbors to be happy.
And like I said, we very much appreciate the way that their plan came out and feel like they were good neighbors and tried to take that into consideration. We were just looking at the future for sidewalk usage through Moonlight Drive in particular. And like I said, right now it's on the west side, which is a better setback than what ours is. Their house is set back further, but I don't want to throw them under the bus for the sidewalk either. It just, like I said, for the extent that anybody would even be on the sidewalk, I just question the, efficient use of money, even putting it in there, because it's really not a big stretch from County B down to where Creek Court turns off. So just for future consideration, we just wanted to go on the record for that. Thank you.
And as it says in the staff recommendation, at such time as the common council deems it necessary, sidewalks shall be provided and paid for by the church. So that could be who knows when. Yeah, so, all right, so any other council discussion? All right, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
I so move.
Second?
I have a motion and a second, and we'll vote.
Shanley,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Stockhausen,
Yes,
Killian.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, so common council action, and I would note that, as I said, staff has, given us, 4 recommendations. The B and C refer to the, requirements of the fire department, but we now have a memo dated August 22nd, 2019, so that is more current, Joe, and that is what should be included in any motion, is that correct?
Well, I think if we keep the same
Keep the
recommendations,
Same recommendations and
then
just.
there's
the-
some ability to, modify the site plan between the
So we
fire
will
department
note,
and church.
yeah, we will note that the memo was received from the fire department, which clarifies and maybe expands upon some of the final design of the driveway and the fire hydrants. So is there a motion?
I make a motion to approve the conditional use permit to allow the construction of a church at 1595 West Main Street, subject to the following conditions in letters A, B, C, and D, and also recommendation of the changes required by the fire department of the city of Platteville.
Second?
All right, we have a motion and a second, and we'll vote.
Shanley,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Stockhausen,
yes.
Killian.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you, everybody. Next, public hearing is for a plan unit development for the UWP Sesquicentennial Hall. We'll start with staff presentation.
Yes, the city approved the plan unit development for the UWP campus back in 2005 when they were getting ready for the Tri-State Initiative and had a multiple building project list. So that was approved with kind of the understanding when they get to the end of those projects and some additional changes come along, or something that was not identified or significantly different that was shown on the plan, then that they'd come in for a modification or amendment to that PUD. So that's what they're requesting for now. They have a proposed expansion project for the Sesquicentennial Hall building, which basically is an expansion of the existing engineering building, which is at the northwest corner of Southwest Road and Longhorn Drive. So it would be a 3-story addition onto that building. It add approximately 85,000 square feet, would include instructional space, laboratories, computer labs, maker and shop spaces, department and faculty offices, student study spaces, and support functions. Basically, it's going to serve the mechanical, civil, and environmental engineering programs. As part of that addition, they will have to, they're actually adding on a couple of spots on that building, but it'll go into the area where the current parking lot is west of that building. So there will be a modification of that parking lot. That modification will result in the loss of 16 parking spaces. Some other changes to the site. They're going to add drop-off lanes on Longhorn Drive in front of the building, so that will help serve the buses and visitors accessing that property, including the city bus transit system. They will also be adding expanded bike parking, several locations adjacent to the building. So this was reviewed by the Plan Commission. They did recommend approval of the PUD amendment with one condition, that the university cooperates with the city to address any parking impacts resulting from the project. If there are any, staff would recommend approval with the same condition. Any questions?
Questions for the staff? All right, seeing none, is there an applicant statement? Obviously, if you would please give your name and your address.
Hello, I'm Doug Stevens. I live at 10 Preston Drive in the city of Platteville, and I'm employed as senior campus planner at UW-Platteville. I want to say that the university does agree with the Plan Commission's recommendations to approve the proposed POD with the following condition: that the university cooperate with the city in regard to any upcoming parking impacts. Are there any questions?
Questions for the applicant? All right.
Thank you.
Public statements in favor, I don't have anyone registered. Public statements against, I don't have anyone registered. And public statements in general, there's no one who's registered. So council discussion. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
I have a motion and a second, and we'll vote.
Shanley? Yes. Nichols?
Yes.
Stockhausen?
Yes.
Killian?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Common council action.
I make the motion to approve the proposed planned unit development amendment to allow the construction of Sesquicentennial Hall with the following condition of A that was attached by the planning commission.
Second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second, and we'll vote.
Shanley? Yes. Nichols?
Yes.
Stockhausen?
Yes.
Killian?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you. Next, we go on to consideration of the consent calendar. The following items may be approved in a single motion and vote due to their routine nature or previous discussion. Please indicate to the council president if you would prefer separate discussion and action. First is council minutes from our August 12th and August 13th, one special, one regular meeting. B is payment of bills. C is appointments to boards and commissions, and we have a lot of city vacancies. If anybody out there is interested in finding out more about how this government works, it should be a great opportunity. Most boards and commissions meet once a month, but some of them meet quarterly, so take a look on the city website and put your name in, please. Licenses, 1 year and 2 year operating licenses to sell or serve alcohol are in our packet. Permits, we have a walk-run permit for the Monster Dash on Saturday, November 2nd from 10 a.m. to noon. We have a request to cancel the September 24th council meeting. both myself and the council president will be out of the city, and so that would put us somewhat short on members. Resolution 1913, application for exemption from the levy of any county library tax. That's something that we do annually. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I move to approve the consent calendar.
Second it?
Motion and second, we'll vote.
Shanley,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Stockhausen,
Yes.
Killian.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, next is information, citizens' comments, observations, and petitions, if any, and we do have some folks who have asked to speak tonight. I'm gonna start with Ben Belke. He has information in general.
Ben Belke, 910 Elk Street, Galena, Illinois. So I've kind of been doing this whole summer. I'm going to keep on doing it. This is kind of like a report of what's happening at Platteville and what's happening with the students and just general information about what's going on there. So first off, this welcome weekend is coming up. People are already starting to move back. I'm sure some of you have probably heard the marching band out. And that's going to keep on continuing. This weekend is welcome weekend with, if you guys don't know, we have Chris Lane and Mitchell Tenpenny. They will be our acts, as well as this Labor Day is Pioneers Pay It Forward, which I've talked about kind of quite a bit. But for those of you who don't know, it's kind of our give back to the community. A lot of students go out into the community, surrounding communities, and they go out and they volunteer. So that's where a lot of us get our volunteer hours and just kind of help the community out. And also just general student move-in, that starts kind of right now, but the returning students aren't until Saturday and Sunday. And then again, this is kind of the last thing. I'm looking for old photos of whether it's the university or whether it's the city. What we're looking to do is kind of on our Facebook page, kind of put out old photos of the university about once a week or around kind of that timeline. So any old photos, anything would be really appreciated. All right. Any questions?
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
We also have some others who have asked to speak, and I didn't mention, but if you could limit yourself to 5 minutes for comments, that would be appreciated. So in no particular order, Mike Mayer. This is relative to the Deborah Court drainage ditch for the information of the other council members.
That's correct. My name is Mike Mayer. I live at 1525 Deborah Court, and I'd like to give some photographs here to the council members to review to offer as a frame of reference as we discuss this. Our entire neighborhood's been affected by this drainage ditch for quite a long time. And so we are asking the council to give serious consideration to funding the repair of this ditch or a fix for all of the erosion problems and issues we've had with this over such a long time period. We know that it's proposed for the 2020 budget. When I moved into Deborah Court in 1999, this drainage ditch was 3 feet wide and about 20 to 24 inches deep. On my property now, because of the fact that the rainwater drains from the golf course directly into my property line, a 36-inch drainage tube comes in with the water rushing like a whitewater rapids. Also, too, the rainwater coming off of Ridge Avenue drains to that same drainage ditch. So whenever we have heavy rain, it is a significant amount of water flowing throughout that area of the neighborhood. This drainage ditch is between Deborah Court and West Gulf Drive. And so all of our backyards border this particular drainage ditch. As you can tell by the photographs, the erosion has been significant. All of us at one time or another have come down and spoken with Howard regarding concerns about it. We have several concerns we'd like to voice because over the last 3 weeks, Alliant Energy has dug up 7 of our front yards, including my own, in order to relocate all their utilities that were along this drainage ditch and put them up at curbside on West Gulf Drive and Deborah Court. And so there's several of us that have large, newly seeded areas that are our front yards. at this point in time. Alliant Engineers determined that we were going to have serious power outages if it wasn't addressed and addressed soon. And there's other concerns that we have, child safety. We have a lot of little ones in our neighborhood. My property has been affected the most of any of the properties along there, but at the very least, the child safety issue is a concern to us. We have little ones in the neighborhood. It's very easy to fall 5 feet from the edge of my grass into that drainage ditch. I'm down to bedrock in that drainage ditch. I have 3 grandchildren that are down in that area once in a while, and it wouldn't take a whole lot to fall into that ditch. And for the little toddlers we have, quite a few in the neighborhood, it is a safety concern. It is dangerous for riding mowers. Some of my neighbors will attest to this. My wife Nancy likes to mow the lawn, and she has run into situations where the parts of the lawn that you can't tell is so soft from rainwater. And there's areas, one of the photographs shows a large 3-foot wide portion of sod that has fallen in the ditch just recently. And this has continued once again for 20 years. The erosion of the property is a concern. Utilities were exposed. That's why Alliant addressed it, which we certainly appreciate. We feel that this situation will continue to deteriorate, so we would like to ask the Common Council to consider the funding to take care of the problem for 2020. So thank you.
Thank you.
Here's your pictures.
Joyce Voss?
I'll give them to.
I'm Joyce Boss. I live at 1590 West Gulf Drive, and I too am affected by this drainage ditch. I have about a 4-foot culvert that goes under my driveway and through my property and out the other side. But where it enters on that 4-foot culvert, when the water rushes so quickly and with the hard rains that we've been getting recently, it fills up that 4 foot of culvert, and the edges are slanted outwards, so it has to really fill up that area before it overflows that culvert and makes the ground around the culvert soft. I have a riding mower, and I have quit mowing next to the culvert because it's about a 5-foot drop down there, and I weed trim about a 5-foot area. I don't know how far this softening of the ground is going, and if my riding lawnmower is going to punch through the ground at any time and I'm going to tip over and fall into the drainage ditch. I don't know if it's going to erode out under my driveway, crack my driveway. These are some of the concerns that I have. I've put in, I'm down the creek bed too when it washes that hard and fast, and I've put in great big rocks in the holes that are around the culvert in the area that I used to mow, and the holes go all the way down to the bottom of the creek bed. So I filled them up with rocks, but when the water comes in so fast and furious, I don't know where those rocks go, but they're washed out and the holes are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So I encourage Mr. Crowfoot to come look at this problem, and I hope that you can put some money towards fixing this type of problem for our neighborhood.
Joseph Smith.
Hi, I'm Joseph Smith. I live at 1515 Deborah Court. As everyone has said, the drainage ditch is there. I've been there 2 years and it's gotten bigger. And I also have a problem with mowing next to it. I mow about a foot away and then I weed eat what I can and let it go. So I'd just like the council's consideration on this project for the budget for 2020. Thank you.
Thank you. Jill Rouse.
Good evening. My name is Jill Rouse, and I live at 1540 West Gulf Drive. I'm here to speak in favor of finding a resolution to our drainage ditch issue. Our house, right next to us, is one of the drain tubes that leads to the ditch. And the shed that was there, we've lived there 13 years. The shed that was in place there when we moved in, the ditch is getting closer and closer to that shed, where I think it's really the mower that's sitting in it that's keeping it in place with some of these rains. And speaking of the mower, my husband was cutting the grass one day and didn't realize how soft it was as it was getting closer to the ditch, where it was washing it away from underneath. And his mower did go into the ditch. He had to jump off, and then we had to get a couple guys to help get the mower out of the ditch. So that was really kind of a risky situation. We do have tree roots exposed now for some probably 30-foot pine trees in our backyard that have been there prior to us moving in. So we will soon be probably starting to see a problem with losing trees. As Mike had mentioned, there are lots of small children in the area. We have 6 young ones living right across the street from us. And I can attest to the fact that kids like to play in water because our daughter used to play back by the ditch. So it definitely is a problem, as now it's getting wider and deeper. Mr. Crowfoot did previously, I think it was last summer, have some big rocks put in right where the drain tube comes out to try and shift things around, have them move it a different direction. That helped temporarily, and the water's come so fast through that it's kind of moved those rocks around. So it really was a very temporary fix. I think that pretty much covers everything. Anybody have any questions? Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you, and thank you all for coming. This is something that obviously we would have to discuss at a different time than right now. But thank you for the information. All right, the other thing that we are going to be doing this evening during this time is we have, as most of you know, a vacancy on the council. Unfortunately, one of our members had to resign because her family obligations were really taking her time, and she didn't have the time to spend on the council. So we have asked for applications to fill that position, and we have received 5 applications. And we will be interviewing those individuals on September 3rd at 6:30 in the evening, I believe. We will be posting that meeting if we haven't done so already. It will take place in the Platteville Police Department meeting room. And so just to make it as fair as we can make it, what I have in this little bucket here is the name of the 5 applicants. And we will be doing 15-minute interviews, approximately 10 really, with 5 minutes to switch out to the next person. Interviews on the night of the 3rd. So the first interview will take place at 6:30. And so Shashan, and I apologize if I've mispronounced your name, Thompson, we would ask you to be at the police department meeting room at 6:30 on September 3rd, and you would be the first candidate that we would interview. Then 15 minutes later at 6:45, Stacy Strobel. And again, we will be sending this information out to the candidates. So Stacy Strobel would be the second person at 6:45. And then at 7 o'clock, Ben Belke would be interviewed by the council. Then at 7:15, it would be Mike Den. And at 7:30, Jason Arts. So again, we will be sending that information out, but just for everybody's information, that is the order in which the candidates will be interviewed by the council members. If you have any questions, please contact me or Barb. But we will see the council members otherwise on September 3rd at 6:30 at the police department. All right, go on to reports in our packet. Water and Sewer Commission, I have nothing to add. Killian or Shanley, anything to add?
No additions?
All right, Parks, Forestry, and Recreation Committee. Plan Commission, Klein, who is not present this evening. Airport Commission, Dawes is not present. Board of Appeals, Zoning, Klein, and also Community Safe Routes Committee. We do have that, the minutes in our packet. So going on to our first action item, it's Resolution 1912, forming the Complete Count Committee. Catherine.
Yes. So the census, the 2020 census is coming up starting in March, going through midsummer, and census representatives reached out to the city to form this committee. The committee will provide outreach to hard-to-count populations, and we'll be going through training to see what various methods we can use, and each member will decide what method to use for public engagement to try and get people to make sure they take the census. So it's important that everyone takes the census for funding and also representation at local, state, and federal levels. I also provided the list of the complete count committee members that we have, and we're scheduled to start training next week. So staff recommends approving the resolution. You do have the draft if you would like to read it, and then sample motion.
So if I may just, because I do think it's important, sometimes I think people don't understand what the census does for communities. So it says, whereas the census information is used to determine how many members our state has in the United States House of Representatives, and is also used to determine districts in our state legislature and local governing bodies. So it is important that we fill these out. It also is important to our community because it determines federal and state aids and grants, economic development, housing assistance, transportation improvements, and many other uses. So please, when the census information comes to your house, please fill it out and return it, or if someone knocks at your door because somehow we've missed you in the mailing, please complete the census.
There will also be an online option, so
Okay.
for us younger millennials that might want to take that, there's that option.
Good to know, the online is available as well. All right, so what we have is a resolution that we are being asked to approve this evening, forming the Complete Count Committee. Is there a motion?
I move to approve Resolution 1912, creating a complete count committee.
All right, we have a motion and a second, and we'll vote.
Shanley?
Yes.
Nichols?
Yes.
Stockhausen?
Yes.
Killian?
Yes,
Motion carries.
All right. And next item, City Assessor Services Contract.
I will have to pinch hit tonight, I think. Okay. Our current assessor contract ends at the end of this year. Staff, specifically Nicola, drafted a request for proposal for the following 3 years. We had 2 proposals, one by Accurate Appraisal and one by Associated Appraisal Consultants. You see the results of the tabulation of those proposals, and staff recommends Accurate Appraisal proposal option C, the blend program, and there's the sample motion to go with it.
Questions, anyone? All right, is there a motion?
I move to approve accurate appraisal for city assessor services for the years 2020, 2021, and 2022 under option C, blend program with annual maintenance in 2020 and 2021, and market revaluation in 2022.
Second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second, and we'll vote.
Shanley? Yes. Nichols?
Yes.
Stockhausen?
Yes.
Killian?
Yes,
Motion carries.
All right, those are the only action items. We have no information items, so a motion to adjourn.
move to adjourn.
Second?
We have a motion and a second, and we'll vote.
Shanley?
Yes.
Nichols?
Yes.
Stockhausen?
Yes.
Killian?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thanks, everybody.